rebellious is the devil. And a lot of times we look at our teenage children and we think that they're the devil, and the teenage children look at the parents and think they're the devil. And we lose sight of really who our enemy is in this warfare that we're in. Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So many times we see political corruption and things going on, and these are a few things that I'm going to discuss today. But we lose sight of who's behind that political corruption. We looked at Nixon's era, we look at some of the things that Jimmy Carter's doing today, and we know they're not Christian deeds. We know that they have nothing to do with the Lord, but we kind of scratch them off as the man. We should scratch them off as the enemy, and the man is not the enemy. I came out of a family that was, many of you, how many of you were raised Baptist? We'll start that way. All your life, that's what you were raised from the time you were a little child of Baptist. How many of you were raised in a Christian home? Okay. Now, so in the Pentecostal churches, which I try to avoid as much as possible, they have a term called homegrown Pentecostal. I guess homegrown Baptist would be just as fashionable. Well, I was a homegrown witch. From the time that I was 5 years old, I knew nothing but witchcraft. I would have known it sooner, but they didn't discuss it with me. They take you very, very young. And my last name was Todd, but that was just changed about 60 years ago. Until then, our name was Collins. And the Collins family, my direct tree, was responsible, according to witchcraft history and a few history books that I can find also, with bringing witchcraft to the United States. So when I was 14, and some of you might consider that a very early age, but it wasn't. It was kind of a late age for this. I was initiated into organized witchcraft. In other words, I was made what Brother Rasmussen is. I was made a pastor, a minister. I was ordained. In fact, a few years later, when I went to enlist in the service, I didn't have to go because I was draft exempt, because I was the ordained minister of a legal recognized church. So, 4D status for a few people who know what that is. I'm sure Brother Rasmussen does. Ordained ministers are exempt. And I enlisted and went through the service until I got into a little shooting incident in Germany. After I'd come back from Vietnam, I re-enlisted and went to Germany. And I was getting ready to be court-martialed. In fact, I had everything down pat. I was as good as gone. We had entered a plea of guilty for a deal of 35 years and then parole, and they wouldn't even consider it. An officer had been killed in this situation, and I was more or less just waiting to be transferred to Leavenworth to serve the time when Witchcraft Church, which I thought was just a little group of people that I belonged to, sent a political member of that church, a state senator, two of them, state senator, U.S. senator, and a representative over to Germany, and they took hold of the situation, and 24 hours later I was a civilian in the United States with all my time, rank, and an honorable discharge, and my court-martial records didn't exist anymore. And all of a sudden I realized I wasn't in something that just lit candles and incense and said magic words once in a while and got pins and dolls. There was a little more to it than just a religion. And I left New Jersey and went home to Columbus, and I asked my real mother, I have two mothers, I have a foster mother and a real mother. I asked my real mother what I was to do, and she said, here's an envelope with $2,000 and a one-way ticket to New York City. You get there on the next plane, and I'll tell them you're coming. She didn't tell me who she was going to tell that was coming or anything. But I flew to New York City, and I spent 6 months learning all new witchcraft. Till then, I had been taught what most of the teenagers learn, and I want to tell the teenagers something here real quick. I'm sure most of you probably go to the school here, but if you were in a regular school, you would meet witches running all over the place. We hear this across the country. Almost every high school has it, especially in California. And they tell the young people lies. They tell them it's ESP, they tell them it's psychic power, they tell them it's spirits of the dead, they tell them everything but what it is. And I was supposed to be a high priest leading a church that had 13 ministers to it, plus a couple hundred people in his congregation. And I believed this. And then all of a sudden, for 6 months, this man, Dr. Buckland, unraveled everything and told me there was a one God, where before we believed there was four. There was one, and his name lied to me for almost 18 years, they were probably lying to me now. But I went ahead and believed it for 6 months. I took lessons in witchcraft that I didn't even know that things could happen that had happened. And then I was transferred to Los Angeles, good old LA. Can't seem to get away from it. And for 6 months, my foster mother taught me something that your pastor is very familiar with, the political situation of the occult. And all of a sudden I realized that witchcraft wasn't just spell casting, it had a purpose in mind. And that's when I started getting a little afraid, because when I was 10, as I said, I learned a little about the Bible. It just happened to be all revelations that I learned. And all of a sudden we were discussing a world ruler that would be personally guided by Lucifer, that could gain control of the world supernaturally and take control of people's minds. Of course, they didn't say there was a defense against this. The way they spoke, everybody was affected. We sat there, and for 6 months I learned the political structure and the history of witchcraft. And then I was taken to Colorado, and I was placed through an initiation into the sixth realm. And this initiation consisted of a blood sacrifice. And from then on, I was given a territory of 13 states. This didn't have to be one of them. It belonged to my foster mother. But I was in charge of all the occult, political, and drug activity in 13 states. This is where I was in 1972. And I want to leave this with you. Witchcraft is real and supernatural. I remember the minister who witnessed to me said that until he found his daughter in it, he was always, and he's a Baptist pastor, was always raised to believe that witches were fables that flew around on broomsticks on Halloween night. And all of a sudden he woke up and found it was very real. If the power came from demons, I don't need the demons. So before you teenagers start fooling around with the astrology charts and the Ouija board, check out the 18th chapter of Deuteronomy and find out you'll pick up a demon from doing it. And you pick up one, you keep on going. My foster mother wrote a book, and she said, doing one spell or practicing one seance in witchcraft is like jumping off of a tall mountain or a skyscraper. There's no turning back. It is the strongest addiction that I know. Dave Wilkerson said that he had seen people go through withdrawal from drugs many times, but seeing one witch go through withdrawal from the occult shattered his mind. And I've helped thousands of people through withdrawal from witchcraft and withdrawal from drugs. And once you've seen the withdrawal that a person goes through from being in witchcraft, you'll think that drugs is something you practice in kindergarten. It's that violent and that destructive. And what I started to say was, nobody has ever succeeded in getting away because they simply will kill you with a spell. Now, Brother Rasmussen knows from testimony from other people who have been around, they haven't been able to do this to me or anybody else that's ever gotten out. A few people had been killed physically that have gotten out, that were Christians, that got out of witchcraft. And they've tried this with me and my wife and so on, but they've never succeeded, and we're still very, very much alive. But we have to depend wholly upon Jesus to stay in that situation. And before any of the young people decide that witchcraft is a groovy thing, they will tell you you can get out anytime you want. But once you're in, there's a bounty on your head should you ever leave. And I don't care if you're 13 or 14 years old, the bounty starts at $10,000, and they send a professional. They don't send an everyday person. If you're wondering why I'm still alive, it isn't easy. I've got bullet holes in the buildings and the bombed out buildings and everything else. You don't walk into a building that blows up in your face and walk back out without a scratch on you. But that's the situation. It is no joke. It is a serious situation. The occult gives up less people to conversion than any other thing. And it's not because they don't want out. They desperately want out. We went to Minneapolis to where they had a convention. We took 10,000 of the Broken Cross there to distribute free, and they were so afraid of this book coming, they canceled the convention. Rather than let it fall in the hands of the people who would be coming from across Europe and across the United States to attend. But people came into our meetings there that came anyway, and they listened, and when they were done, they asked my wife and myself and other ministers, if you can put us in a safe place of protection, we'll come out. But they're physically afraid to come out. You think the mafia has fear, for those that have been watching The Godfather or something? There's no fear compared to the occult people coming after you. But we are believing that we will have this situation. Brother Rasmussen will be one of the few people in the United States who will know how to get converts to the refuge that we're preparing. So we're preparing a place not for them to go permanently and hide, but for them to grow in the Word and in physical will be putting in the back of all its publications on the occult the phone numbers of the different things, and it'll be one of the phone numbers that people can reach and say, we have a convert that's been won out of the occult. How do we get him to this refuge place? And you will be one of the few people in the United States that will know where this place is in the mountains. It'll be that well guarded. So we just ask your prayers and your questions now if you've got some. Yeah. Well, 12 years old girls are big, more or less. They've been known to get down to 10, but they usually start at 12 or 13 and go to 25. And for the people who like to hitchhike, this is how they pick them all up. And of course, the police will just tell the parents when kids run away from school. They use them for sexual and for sacrifice, human sacrifice purposes. For those that are wondering if that is an accident, you're in LA County, right? The LA County Sheriff's Department has a very secret undercover thing. I don't even know if you can find out if it exists, but I've talked to them. It's called the Occult Squad. They told me in '73 that they found 35 bodies of girls in Los Angeles County that year, and I talked to them in December, that they knew to be human sacrifice, which they listed as rape cases to people from the public. The statistics that came in so far this year are close to 125. The year's not even over. Now that's girls that have been used for human sacrifice. And if you all notice, there's quite a few rape cases that happened around Halloween that are in the news right now. And from what we can find out, the circumstances of each death fit human sacrifice. But you'll never hear it, that that's the reason. We turned in 4 different people that were responsible in the area that I knew about to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and they arrested all 4. They got convictions, and in every conviction they listed it as rape, killing, and they knew better. Yes. Yes, it is. It's listed in the 18th chapter of Deuteronomy as converting with necromancy or familiar spirits. Clairvoyancy, anything that is psychic is a counterfeit of God's power by the devil. And it was, okay, the woman who was giving fortunes in the 16th chapter of Acts, that was clairvoyancy. When Paul cast the demon out, she couldn't tell fortunes anymore. That settles it right there. Yeah. Superstition is a Christian form of witchcraft. Okay? Okay, she asked me if superstition was a form of witchcraft. It's a Christian form of witchcraft. One thing I want to throw at the young people real quick. In the occult stores, they don't sell Ouija boards, in most of them, in the serious ones. They call it a Christian instrument. They say Christians are the only ones stupid enough to use it. Witches know that the devil runs it. They know more than some of the Christians. Yeah. Okay. You want an answer on that? Oh, I'm glad you asked me about that. Yes, I do. Physical evidence. One, let's take the exorcism first. The rite that the Catholic Church uses for exorcism, they have changed a few words. Just, I think about 6 words. Is the witchcraft rite of exorcism. It is 8,000 years old. The Catholic Church is not that old. Okay? Next, on the apparitions, it's the same thing as the Spiritual Church of America or any of the witchcraft organizations. It's called auras. And if you'll notice, none of them are pure white. Now, coming out of the occult, I know the system of collars. And the principality, there's 7 of them. And all the demons under them go by the collar of their leaders, their generals. And the occult demon, Regia, appears as a blue snake or a blue mist. I've heard thousands of reports, including Jean Dixon, that her guides, her spirit guides, familiar spirits, are blue in nature when they communicate with her. And of course, the red is lust and so on. It's a long list. But the saints or apparitions, I want to get into this thing real quick. The Catholic Church's altar, except for the Atame or the knife, is the exact altar of witchcraft. And according to the reports I can get on the Nicene Council, most of the ministers at the Nicene Council that set that heresy up were from the Temple of Diana, which is witchcraft. So, everything, the bells, the incense, the whole ritual, they're witchcraft, and they can't get around it. Yes. Okay. Did everybody hear that question? Okay. He wants me to explain the Council of 13. I'll explain what that is if you're probably wondering. And what their purpose or thrust is. Okay. All right. If you'll all, just give you a second, reach in your billfold, put in the offer plate later. Reach in your billfold and take out a $1 bill real quick. We'll settle the whole thing. I'll let you ask your federal government later how this got on the $1 bill. On the back of the $1 bill, you'll see the crest with the pyramid in it. Now, Dr. Rasmussen has upstairs the whole crest. You only have the words left out of it on the blocks. But there are sections. His is a little behind time. There's a few new organizations. His dates back to the 1800s. But that pyramid in the Illuminati consists of 3 pyramids and a sphinx. But their crest is this crest. The Illuminati is the occult organization that we belong to. It means the light bearers. The witch is called Mariah, the conquering wind. But it's the capstone above. The eye is Lucifer. The triangle of the capstone is the tribunal of the Rothschild family, which is called the Holy Family. They lead the Illuminati. They would be Paul, Peter, for the Catholics, all the saints, and Mary, and everybody rolled into one, and the Pope. They are the voice. The doctrine of the occult teaches that Lucifer comes and sits at their dining room table. When they see the table, they leave 13 chairs out, and the 13th one is for Lucifer to sit in himself. They set him a plate and everything. Now, I've been there in the mansion, and I've seen this go on. And they, in turn, direct to the top block of that pyramid. And that top block is the Council of 13 of the Grand Druid Council, which I was a member of. Now, the Druid system of government is not that the politicians run everything. It is the same system that Rome had. The priests let whoever wants to rule the government, but the priest must rule the ruler. Now, I'll let that sink on you for a while. And I want to throw this in. It will cause a lot of controversy, I'm sure, but it's a fact. Since the time of Woodrow Wilson, including him, there has never been a president of the United States that was not an Illuminati, that did not belong. Now, that'll shatter a few people's ideas about a Christian president right now, but it's a fact anyway. And the Grand Druids, although they're just supposedly everyday people like me, you look at me now, I'm this way. I was a different way when I was in witchcraft. And part of my authority was whatever governors, senators, or political people were in my area took direct political orders from me, which I in turn did not think of, but simply translated to them from the orders that we got from London, from the Rothschild family. Now that's the Council of 13. The thrust is that when I left in 72, they had a chart that said in 8 years, they would have the whole world. And from remembering that chart, I haven't seen one thing through the news media not happen on schedule according to that chart. Rothschild and a few people in the Illuminati were born Jews. But they're not Jews. Get in the Word of God and find them. A little bit. The system is this. With the same books that proclaim that the Illuminati is a Jewish organization also proclaim that the Illuminati is a Luciferian organization. You can't have both. A true Jew believes in Yahweh. A Illuminati person, and I'm not a Jew, and I was a leader of the Illuminati, believes in Lucifer, the god of light, peace, love, blah, 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 and so on. It has nothing to do with the thing, because they might be a few Jews born, and they might have some ties with Zionism, bloodline, but the organization itself has nothing to do with Judaism at all. It is totally 100% Druid occult. That's the purpose. In fact, the reason that the Rothschilds even still reside in London is because England is considered to the witches the same as Palestine is considered to us. It is the Holy Land. You take pilgrimages there. You stop off and kiss the stones on Rothschild's mansion for luck, and so on and so forth. If by some chance you happen to meet a Rothschild and he gives you a blood sign or a blessed bee, then your whole life is that. It's that type of nature. But it has nothing to do. There is an interesting thing, though, I'd like to throw in. A lot of witches do wear the thing called the Star of David. David was long dead before that star was ever drawn. His son drew it. And it's called the hexagram. And the word to curse, or the hex, comes from the hexagram. And when witches practice magic, they draw a 5-pointed star to stand in, and they call demons up in the evil sign, what we call the Star of David. So before Christians start tying it around their neck, that's called the demon star, or the death star. And that's why it was drawn. For a few people that might be confused about the Solomon aspect, when he backslid, he became the most holiest person in the occult. Everything that we practice are based upon books that he wrote and pictures that he drew when he backslid. So, including that exorcism rite you asked about, he wrote it. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll give you an okay, she asked if they're behind witchcraft programs that are coming on. I'm going to give you 2 quick examples. For one, I'm telling you this across the country, the most disastrous film that has ever come out pro-witchcraft, thousands of people that are Christians are going to go watch and are watching. I was told by a bunch of Christian people across the United States in every city I went to, you got to go see this movie. There's no sex, there's no violence, there's, it's just an old kind of, how would you put it, I can't think of the guy in the 30s that was a sequence in outer space movies, Flash Gordon type picture. So I went and watched it. It used words and beliefs that are the innermost beliefs in witchcraft. They're not even the ones spoken of in the open. And witches don't call it witchcraft. They call it the Force. It's called Star Wars. And the whole thing is centered around 2/3 of the movie is based on the Force. That you're stronger when you die, you're reincarnated, you receive guides from people who are dead. It's ESP. See, the biggest line about witchcraft is that it's not bad. It's neither good nor bad. It's the person that's good or bad. And this movie emphasized that a lot. That witchcraft was okay as long as you were a good person. So, adults, before you let it go. And the other one I want to hit real quick is how many remember Bewitched? It's probably one of the main reasons that witchcraft grew, it and Dark Shadows. Bewitched was written by a witch. The belief of witchcraft is you're born a witch, and that the mortals, or everyday people who don't practice, are dummies. You remember that in the thing? Well, they never got into, it was more of a comedy, they never got into witches' ceremonies or Sabbaths or anything like that. Last night a person asked me to watch who had gotten to read the script of the new one, Tabitha. So I watched it. It had witchcraft all through it. Real witchcraft. Ceremonies, Halloween, everything. They're coming out stronger now. You better watch what your kids turn on the TV set. There hasn't been a witchcraft movie that had anything to do with Satan in the last 5 years that Satan didn't win. The Illuminati name's not used much anymore, except by everyday people who find out about it. Witches don't use it. The organization doesn't use it. And each country has it. The Mariah is the occult part, and the political part has a name in each country. And the United States is called the Council of Foreign Relations. That's mainly how they got into it. They mainly got into it because you can't become a president. You may think you elect a president, but I'm here to tell you, you elect whoever they put up. And when I was saved in 72, I got on a television broadcast that went throughout southern Texas, New Mexico, and so on. And they still got the tape down. It was on a talk show called the 7 Club in the morning. And I had a minister from the church there with me, Ed Human. And they asked me the political aspect that would be happening. Now, this was the election of Nixon and McGovern at the time. And I said a few things I don't want to really get into right now because we don't have the time. But one of the things I said was that the last election that would happen, the president, the next one that's coming up, the one that just happened, the president that would be elected would be the last president elected in the United States. That doesn't mean it'll be the last election. It just means he'll be the last president. And that when he was elected, he was so important to be elected that the person who would run against him would also be Illuminati. That they wouldn't allow anybody else to get the nomination from the other party. and that he would purposely do everything during his campaign, the other party, in this case Ford, to throw that election. And if you'll look back on it, I think you'll see things that he did that proved that lost many, many votes. And then he almost won anyway. I think it would have been disastrous if he had won to them, not to us. Yeah. Halloween had absolutely nothing to do with Christianity. Christians shouldn't even touch it with a 10-foot pole. It comes from the word shaman, which means the day the dead come back and talk. It was invented by witches, capitalized on by the Catholics, but nothing in it has to do with Christians. Nothing. Who wants to celebrate a day that witches sacrificed thousands of people throughout the world on? Yes. White magic and black magic is a Catholic term. When they were burning people at the stake for being witches, they wanted to protect themselves that practiced it. So they invented the term white witchcraft or white magic and black magic. Witches, in their books, will tell you that it doesn't exist, as it was mentioned in Star Wars. And yet, when they're trying to convert a Christian, they will say they're white witch and not a black witch. And yet they'll tell you in their books it doesn't exist, which means they'll say anything to convert you. But there is no such thing. The devil is evil, and you can't whitewash him or anything he does. You can call it ESP, but it's still witchcraft. Yeah. Hypnosis is of the devil. Plain and simple. I sat on a council of 13 people that take orders only from the Rothschild Tribunal in London, which they claim they take their orders directly from Lucifer. And that's why they reside. Somebody's asking me if some of the Rothschilds live in California. Not those directly related to the tribunal. They won't leave England. Some live in France, but they always come over to England because they believe that England is the place that Lucifer is most fluent and can speak to them more in person than he could anywhere else. And from talking to Christians in England, they estimate there's only 2% of the population are Christians in the Great Britain country. So they have quite a fluent time over there. In fact, a friend of mine just brought pictures back of where they're building homes with broomstick poles coming out of the chimney for the witchers to land on to bless their homes. These aren't ignorant people. These are the new million-dollar mansions that are going in. It's not just a superstition. The country has really gone back to witchcraft. It was originally total witchcraft. I've been ministering with people in the occult, and in the last year, my main ministry has been to Christians playing with the occult. And we're going to demonstrate that in a minute here. But this is what our ministry outlook has been. We just, in September, went to Minneapolis, St. Paul area, which is where the occult owns one of their Bible colleges. Their printing company was well through Christian giving. We bought 10,000 of the broken crosses to distribute free there. We went there and we worked for 2 weeks there through the state fair and other things that was going on, and had a hotline set up for them to call in. And they knew we were coming, and they canceled their convention. And close to 500,000 people scheduled to appear at their convention, and they can cost them thousands and thousands of dollars. And the story, the best we could get was they were too afraid that this broken cross would get in their hands, since it has been the leading instrument for stopping people in joining and getting those that were in. And they called the convention the Aquarian Arts Festival completely off. First time it's been done so in years. And we're going back there. In fact, Friday and Saturday we're going back for 5 days to be in prayer force. The people who put the second $100,000 on my head came out of Minneapolis because the last time we were up there. So be in prayer for my safety while we're up there. I really appreciate your prayer. It was kind of hairy the last time we were up there. But this is my background, and I want to say one thing before we start here for those that are newcomers. The organization that I came out of is a cult in religion, not in purpose. Its purpose is political and financial power, complete world rule through finance, which they believe would control the political effort. It's been called by many people the Illuminati, which is called Mariah. The United States is called the Council of Foreign Relations. It has many, many names wherever you go. I met Dr. Rasmussen because he had come across it through the Masons. I've met people who have come across it through political things, through financial bandits, and wherever people have seen it, they have thought that's exactly what it was. It was either in one of those realms. I came out of a realm where I knew better. Came off of a council that was in charge of dishing money out and political orders. In my area, I had 5,000 COVID. That meant I had 65 priests and priestesses. That wasn't the congregation, that was just the ministers. I saw a movie by Hal Lindsey on the occult where he said he believed there were 5,000 witches in the United States. There are 25,000 witches in Los Angeles City alone. So he was way undershort. From the statistics that we are seeing right now, it is the fastest growing religion in the United States and definitely in the world. And the reason it is doing this is because it has financial power, and it's because Christians, most of them, do not know their word and therefore are afraid of it, and therefore do not witness to the people that are in it. And we have not had much success in the last couple of years because they have stepped up to the death threats within the occult for people leaving, like a Berlin Wall. And the people are afraid to come out. When we were there, we were in a meeting one night where we had over 5,000 people in one meeting. In that meeting, 1,500 of them were initiated priests and priestesses of witchcraft that had attended the meeting. And hundreds came up and told ministers, myself and my wife later, they would come out and we could guarantee them a safe place to go until they were strong enough to be on their own. We didn't have such a place. We're trying to prepare such a place now. And if you're interested in helping in such a place, get with Dr. Rasmussen. When he comes back from this trip, communicate with him your desire on this, since he will be one of the few people who will know where this place is and be able to send people to it. It will be completely hidden and secret. We had one once before in Phoenix, and 3 people were killed there one night because some pastors interfered with the security of the place, and the occult was watching, and they came in and machine gunned to death 3 girls and wounded the worker. The girls were ages 15 to 18. They do not play games, and this is why we tell the young people, don't go, because they'll tell you to come in, it's nice, it's loving, it's a brotherhood, and you get in, and once you're initiated, you find out, it'll cost them $10,000 if you try to leave, but they'll send it. That's the minimum bounty they put on anybody's head getting out, and they don't care how young you are. So it's not a game, it's a real world out there. So you'll have some path. Now I want to say one thing before we get started. Young people have been running all over saying hi and friendly to me. They're going to want to lynch me when this is over. But young people, you just have to understand that I came out of a world that I saw something you don't see when you turn on the radio. Parents, if you're letting the compromise with your young people, them having rock music in your home, which you as Christian parents own and are responsible to the Lord for, then you're wrong. And I recommend you go home right now and throw it in the trash can immediately. And this is the reason why. You see groups up on the television and you hear them on the radio and in concert and stuff. And, you don't see the behind the scenes. Now, here's one fact. Zodiac Productions, the leading Texas publication. It's changed its name now, but Zodiac Productions when I was with it. I was supposedly the owner of it. The occult owned it. And it was the leading source of concerts in Texas, South and San Antonio. Because I was supposedly the owner, I met most of the groups in existence then. There are a few that have come out since then, but it's still the same type of thing. Almost all of them believe openly in the occult in one way or the other. Most are into Satanism. Now, how many Christian young people remember from Billy Jack, One Tin Soldier, the song? Few of you, okay? The group you heard on the radio called Original Cast. They always said it was done by the original cast. The name of the group that was the original cast is Coven. It was led by Tom Laughlin's daughter. Tom Laughlin played Billy Jack, his wife, his son, David, who produced it, and both his daughters are into Satanism.